I'm currently a stimulation engineer at Chevron. I'm also the North American region representative for the International Young Professionals Group. And so if you were not able to see the initial town hall, each region is really trying to get some representatives from some of the more prominent sections and chapters and kind of understand best practices, see where are the things that we can learn from each other. And so some initial ground rules. If you have questions, please put them in the chat. There will be somewhat of a live Q&A section towards the end. As far as our speakers, I'll introduce them in a second, but for you all, feel free to also kind of jump in, right? If this is really try to be as interactive as possible, trying to learn from each other as best as we can, and how can other sections, maybe smaller sections, take the great work that you all have done. And so if you have the ability to add on to somebody else's response, feel free to do that. So first, we will kick things off with some introductions. And so we are fortunate to have 4 different speakers today. And so our first speaker is Amanda Calleberg. She is the chairperson for the Society of Petroleum Engineers Calgary Young Professionals and was previously the program chair for the SPE International Management Technical Section. Amanda has been an active SPE member since 2014, volunteering in various leadership roles from the University of Calgary's SPE section to SPE Calgary Young Professionals. Amanda works as a commercial development advisor at Inner Pipeline. She was previously the chair of the governance committee for the board of CanLearn Society for Persons with Learning Difficulties and is on her civic government's Calgary Salutes Committee. She has a chemical engineering degree with a minor in petroleum engineering from the University of Calgary and an MBA specializing in finance from Queen's University, where she received the Dean's Gold Medal for the highest GPA in her graduating class. Thank you, Amanda, and representing Canada for us. We'll let you represent all of Canada today. Our second speaker is Carter Grinnell. Excuse me. He is going into his senior year. He's earning his undergraduate degree in petroleum engineering from Colorado School of Mines under Dr. Miskimmons. This summer, he's based out of Oklahoma City as a resource development intern with Continental Resources. In previous summers, he has interned with EOG out of San Antonio in Midland. So Carter is the outgoing president at Colorado School of Mines SPE chapter. So during his term, they really focused on career development, on-campus industry presence, and member engagement. So looking forward to Carter's kind of student perspective. So thank you, Carter, for joining. Our third speaker is Patrick Dwyer. He has been an SPE member since 2013 and is currently a project manager and engineer helping operators navigate their methane emission needs on production sites across North America with Cathero Solutions. Previously, he was a stimulation engineer with 7 years of experience in unconventional and conventional completions across the U.S., as well as offshore in the Gulf of Mexico. Patrick spends a lot of his free time volunteering and supporting the Young Professionals Group in the SPE Rocky Mountain North American region, in addition to skiing and hiking. He graduated from LSU with his bachelor's in petroleum engineering. Thank you, Patrick, for joining us. And then last, but certainly not least, we have Keith Trego. He's a senior manager at Next Tier Oilfield Solutions, where he provides leadership across technical, commercial, and operational projects. He's overseeing the development and deployment of over $250 million in capital assets, ensuring their safe, effective, and seamless integration into ongoing operations. Currently, Keith is leading the conceptualization and commercialization of innovative applications for completions and power services. His expertise lies in managing cross-departmental initiatives and aligning operational standards for efficiency and optimization. Keith's career spans well completion operations, engineering and supervision, and technical business development, and operational integrity management across the lower 48. He also serves as the vice chair for the Young Professionals Group for the Gulf Coast SPE section, and has multiple leadership roles within SPE throughout his career. Keith holds dual bachelor degrees, one in petroleum and natural gas engineering from Penn State, and the other is applied physics from Lock Haven University of Pennsylvania. So thank you to all four of our speakers. Apologize for the gruelingness of introductions, but very excited to get things kicked off. And so, Amanda, the first thing I want to ask you, and I'll kind of ask at least a variation of this question to everybody, just to lay the foundation of why we're here, is what kind of value have you found as an SPE member and being involved with your section and young professionals?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the only reason that I even work in oil and gas is because when I was in my undergrad degree, the U of C, University of Calgary SP student chapter had a Fort McMurray oil sands field trip. So if you've never seen the oil sands in person before, it's they have giant surface mines where they're digging up oil sands and upgrading it and processing it. And getting to actually go and visit that as a first year university student was completely mind blowing to me and so impressive. People had always kind of painted oil and gas as like an old, boring industry. Maybe that's just in Canada, I'm not sure, but actually going and seeing everything and all the processing facilities, that was because of SPE, because their student chapter offered those field trips for the students. And when I was on that field trip, that's when I met so many incredible students that were, many of them had internship experience, and many of them were able to give me really helpful career advice and even school advice. And they became, really good friends. So I would say getting involved as a student was invaluable to me because it confirmed what I wanted to do. You will for sure get immense value out of it. So for me, it took me a while, but the other thing is leadership exposure. So with my young professionals group in Calgary, I'm leading over 30 volunteers, and that's been a really great way for me to get leadership experience without actually having a job with people reporting to me. So this is a way that I can train myself and show, have something on my resume to show that I actually do have quite a bit of leadership experience, even though my job is not a formal leadership role. So those are a few things. I could go on, but I'll let the others chime in.
No, thanks. And I think that's a great kickoff. I have a feeling that networking is going to be a common underlying theme to this response. But no, thank you, Amanda, for that. And so, Carter, I'll kind of shift it over to you just to kind of get a start with that diverse perspective on, from a student side. And, Amanda did a great job of commenting how this has been impactful so early in her career. So since you're really kind of at the start of yours, what's kind of your perspective on the value you found with being an SPE member and your involvement?
Absolutely. Thank you for the introduction, Brent. I echo what Amanda said. I think the biggest thing is connections and people. Being at School of Mines, we have some students that come from oil field families that are pretty familiar. We have some students like myself. I had no prior oil and gas exposure to being there, and SPE lays out a very good platform and baseline level to get to know people, to get involved with an industry, and not only with the other students on campus, but really with potential opportunities that you could have. I think the Minds chapter does a lot to help put students in a position to succeed professionally, whether that's around career days events or happy hours or networking events or bringing people on campus. And I can talk more to that later, but I think the biggest thing is the connections and the people, because especially with hiring seasons being in the fall, it can be a very hectic time, and being involved with SPE and having people know your name when you get to career fair always can go a long ways.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I appreciate that perspective. And then I'll kind of kick the same question over to Patrick, especially with your position of maybe not having always been within the Denver section, right? I mean, going to school at LSU and then moving regionally. So what value have you seen kind of continuing your SPE involvement early in your career?
Definitely. I think the common theme, as you mentioned, is kind of networking, just making those connections across. And I mean, the oil and gas industry is so small that you just never know your connections at your university compared to the Denver section. Some overlap, and you just kind of run into familiar faces along the way. And I mean, I think what SPE has really brought value throughout the years is, events like this, kind of the knowledge sharing, just across from different areas. There's some things you may have never considered that's working for others, and just, I mean, that just goes to show for technology based too. These different companies come in, you just learn a bunch. So just kind of getting ahead of that learning curve, just participating, getting active within SPE has really brought tremendous, enormous value to me. So, yeah, I'll lean towards knowledge sharing.
No, I think especially as young professionals, we definitely are lacking on the experience side within the industry, and so I'm happy to hear knowledge sharing is something that is kind of first of your mind. And then Keith, again, last but not least, what's kind of your perspective on the value you've seen, especially in a relatively large, we'll at least say, with the Gulf Coast section SPE group?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity here. So for me, I was engaged in university, and we had, a pretty decent following up there at State College at Penn State. But I kind of lagged off when I went to the field. I was on the service side. I was in operations for a little bit. Like, definitely wasn't an engineer by trade the entire time. When I moved to Houston, I had management mentorship saying, "Hey, for this role that you're in as an engineer now, you should engage with the local YP chapter. You should engage with SPE." And I kind of didn't listen, to be honest. Being in the woodlands, it was kind of tough. It's a big area down here, as you mentioned, and so I started engaging a little bit more through the conferences, through the sales events, the technical events, bringing those people in, and kind of how Patrick had said, the knowledge sharing for my role specifically, and I kind of leveraged that, and then eventually I just fell into, hey, this is a community, this is networking opportunity, this is something for leadership, as everyone here has mentioned already, to help with that growth, with that ability to self-develop. And so that's kind of where I see the benefits and opportunity with SBE have been, that opportunity to grow as an individual, as well as a leader, as well as help others, shape their own pathways as they move forward. And not everybody will see, the same path, the same benefit as Amanda mentioned, but eventually, it is something you can lean back on and be like, I met someone there. I know that person, and leverage that going forward. And so for me, it's definitely all of the above that everyone has kind of mentioned here, but specifically the mentorship and leadership.
Sure. No, I appreciate that perspective, and I think it's also, it's kind of been a theme throughout, but definitely it's something where maybe if you go to one event, two events, it's still new. There's still not a ton of value there, but once you get to a position where you start recognizing folks, and you're shaking the same hands over and over, and you have those types of relationships, you can definitely see a lot of value. So no, thank you all for kind of setting the groundwork on that value proposition. Keith, I might stay with you and kind of open up a question really around technical programming, maybe recency bias or geographic bias, but I know you guys just had a successful one. So really kind of interested on what type of topics and formats have you guys done within events that have delivered the highest young professional engagement? And in your opinion, what makes those events so successful?
Right. I mean, we have the benefit UCS section to have Houston as our seat, right? And so there's a lot of companies here. There's a lot of movement in and out. As a lot may know or may not know, we just had our annual Roughneck camp last Friday at Exxon's campus. And so, it does help that we have the backing of those type of individuals and companies here locally. But every region has those seats and has those people. Um, what I will say is those panels there that we had, the technical conference, it's an all-day event. We had over 300 people there, a lot of engagement, a lot of support. A lot of it's because we're talking about the things that are lacking, like what's going on with energy, what's going on with, you know, how do you grow? What kind of feedback can you get there? And there's a huge networking opportunity. We had Miss Susan, who's online here today. They're speaking about the benefits of SBE, different things like that. A lot of those are buzzword topics, power infrastructure for energy, for electricity, geothermal, a lot of those topics. But we also had like, hey, what's the future of hydrocarbons? What are we actually going to be doing? And so that's impactful for a lot of us that are still coming up through our career, early career, 10 years or less. Um, and even meeting with those SMEs and those experts, trying to figure out what they're doing to kind of change the landscape as we move forward in the next decade or two. For us, we try to do as many networking opportunities as possible. We have a lot of different organizations here in the region as well. ASME, I'm going to get this one wrong, but the American Driller Society, um, the Young Professional Section, all of our study groups as well. There's just opportunities to branch out and connect with each one of those and see what they're doing as well. And I'd say that's kind of like a lot of the technical sessions are a huge hit, but then we also have a lot of networking sessions on top of that.
Sure, no, and it's nice to hear kind of the combination of things has proved to be successful. So I'll kind of kick over a similar question to Amanda, especially being more in a SPE chapter that may not have necessarily the magnitude of companies and those kinds of things around the Gulf Coast section has. So I guess what within Calgary and Canada especially, what have you really seen technical programming wise that has had the best level of engagement for young professionals?
Yeah, I would say the upstream space is still the most popular. With the SP Calgary membership, we do have most of our members in the upstream space, so that makes sense. For the young professionals specific programming, we launched kind of a 101 series a few years ago where we would try to have a few very broad topics, like we did completions 101, wireline 101, reserves 101. That tends to be a pretty successful strategy because you see that it's kind of a vague enough topic that anyone who might want to learn a little bit about a certain topic can come. If the topic gets too specific or too technical sounding at the YP level, that tends to not work as well. But also having speakers, the speaker profile does matter a lot. We've been very fortunate to have a few CEOs come and do talks for our YPs, and they always draw large crowds. VPs at the mega Canadian oil companies, they tend to drive big crowds. So I would say the speaker magnitude, speaker company, and the breadth of topic all matter, as well as we've had to be very careful not to schedule events at the same time as other industry events. So downtown Calgary, everyone's concentrated in one downtown area, which is great. But then you might run into situations where you have other associations, because Calgary is very energy focused. You do have other energy associations that will do events, and sometimes our events actually will happen at the same time, 2 blocks away from each other, and we just didn't know about it when we scheduled it. So we're trying to do a better job of including the other associations in our communications about our upcoming events so that they're aware and that they can try to avoid overlapping with us, because every year, no matter how hard we try, we have at least one event that overlaps with another group. And like Calgary has 5 different young professional in energy sort of type of associations, and they all do great things, but SPE definitely has the most events out of all of them. So sometimes you're just bound to have conflicts. So even stuff like trying to be strategic about when you're scheduling things, that can also help improve the attendance, as well as, we've learned that some people do the hybrid schedule and they're not downtown on Fridays. Some companies are not downtown on Wednesdays. So trying to make sure you're aware what big companies, what their schedules are, so that you're doing events when people are downtown, because people are much more likely to come to your event when they're already downtown rather than having to commute on a day that they're working from home. So we've had to try to gather lots of kind of intel from talking to people and figure out what days work best for people. So that's been also an effective way to boost attendance.
Oh, no, that's very interesting perspective. And I think it kind of feeds well into maybe a follow-up I have with Patrick. And so, Amanda talked about Calgary is a relatively tight knit SPE community, and I know from a little bit of experience in the Denver section, Denver's very much that way, right? It's very similar types of faces, and so kind of similar question: what events have you seen that drove the highest YP involvement? But also maybe what are some of the events that expanded beyond the typical faces that you see, right? I mean, do you guys have any type of events or any kind of efforts that expand beyond the usual X number of folks kind of thing?
No, definitely. I just want to say real quick that Roughneck Camp really, I think, is a perfect example of bridging the gap between kind of student chapters and the professional sections within SPE. I attended it myself right out of college, and it was just worked wonders, to just engage that involvement right out the bat from university, into your professional career. So, going back to the question, basically, I think just like how Amanda was describing, there's a lot of industry events, a lot of industry organizations going on at the same time in Denver. Just collaborating with them on specific events. I've learned kind of throughout the year, cross collaboration. If you can partner with AAD or DAPL or Landman's Association, we did a joint event with them, kind of a panel session, just kind of driving different, formatting besides just a typical slideshow. I feel like really get some good engagement, as well as we have kind of our staples for the Denver section throughout the year, and just events that we do really well. And then we kind of have bigger turnouts for those, such as kind of our Halloween costume party, making it into a contest and driving engagement, telling, your friend to bring a friend, and just kind of getting everyone together in kind of a less professional setting. I feel like really drives involvement. You get a lot of people that, may have not even knew what SPE is all about, never heard of it, or just haven't, just taken the time to come to these events. So I just think like we have our one or two big events that we do throughout the year, and kind of repeat, same venue, same theme, and those kind of drive bigger crowds.
No, thank you for that perspective. And a common theme I'm also hearing between you and Amanda is trying to maybe partner with other organizations, right? I mean, there's a relatively small young professional pool within the industry. It's an even smaller pool that is wanting to be involved within societies, and so I think partnering is kind of a great perspective. So, Carter, kind of want to kick it over to you, but also maybe kind of shift the focus a little bit. So, being a student chapter, you all, I'm assuming, kind of go through, early semester, early years, you see a big spike in attendance, and then, maybe things trickle out and you get more of a consistent thing. And so, have you all done anything to maybe try to counteract that heavier weight towards the beginning and try to even out those numbers?
Yeah, great question. I think that we try to do stuff sort of targeted fall versus spring. For those who aren't familiar, we have our fall career days. That's the big event that the school puts on. That's where hiring happens for all internships and all full times. And it's full steam ahead for us at SPE, trying to help create events to give people opportunities. Kind of with what you said on the technical question for others, we mirror more technical stuff in the spring. So for us, a lot of students, like I said earlier, might not be as familiar with industry or what companies are or different company sizes. So we typically try to prioritize lunch and learns in the fall to be more about the company. So those students who aren't as familiar can get up to speed and just learn generally, what does ExxonMobil do, or what does Continental Resources do? In the spring, that's where we get a little bit more technical. That's where we shift from, okay, well, instead of educating our students on what companies are around and what companies are available, now let's talk more to what you guys are doing. And that's sort of the main shift we have to try to counteract that balance, like you said. One cool thing that we did this past year, we had Jeff Dwiggins Consulting in, and we actually did a lunch and learn on campus that was broadcast and recorded live with the artificial lift technical section. So that way, it's not only a great chance for students to hear from Jeff and his team, but also for the greater community of SPE to get access to potentially what we're doing on campus. And we've found pretty good results doing that. You know, we typically get a little bit more grad engagement in the spring and stuff when we get a little bit more technical and a little bit more underclassmen engagement in the fall, just as a byproduct of what we're talking about. But that's generally how we go about trying to have consistent engagement throughout the year.
Sure, no, and that makes sense. And I'll kind of keep it on you for just a second. And you know, my background, I went to mines, and so yeah, fall career days are bring in a lot of folks.
Yeah.
But I also went to a school that didn't necessarily have that same level of recruiting, and so a question I have really from a student perspective is what role do you think SPE needs to be playing in someone's transition from student to industry, right? I feel like a lot of times these questionnaires go out. It's very help me get a job focused. But SPE's hands are kind of tied in that space, right? I mean, SPE's not hiring a ton of people themselves.
Yeah.
And so from your side of things, where do you really see SPE creating value for folks transitioning, right? I mean, that's a difficult time in life. And so what could the society do?
Absolutely. That's a great question. I think that first you got to recognize SPE's position as a student. I mean, when you are a student at Mines, us as a student chapter are very much actively pursuing getting more students involved. We're reaching out to people, we're talking to people. We are very much pushing, hey, you should become a member for us because you can do blank, which will help you do blank. And that last blank is most likely get a job or get an internship. And I think that pathway from membership to engagement to opportunity is a very clear pathway. And I think that once you either get that job out of school or get to the next steps in your career, that path becomes a little bit more cloudy. And I think that there's less active engagement from the SPE side of things towards them to be involved. And I think that is potentially where a gap could happen. At least for me, and I saw the question here, one of the really great things is to figure out what your local SPE chapter is, you know, whether it would be reaching out to, you know, the locals in Denver, Calgary, or down in the Gulf Coast section and get involved. You know, they put on all of these events. And I think that if you've been an involved student member and you see the value that SPE's created you as a student, that can be a testament to what it can do across the rest of your career outside of just the 4 years. And I think that being able to just reach out and get involved is great. I think that there's some things that we could do to help push that a little bit more. And even from talking with Patrick over this past year and having a good relationship with the Denver chapter, there's definitely things I believe on both ends that can really help make that a seamlesser transition.
No, and I appreciate that feedback. And like I said, I think having a student on this is helpful to kind of understand those things. And so with that, I'll kind of pivot to Keith in the same kind of membership growth perspective. You know, Gulf Coast section is big. And so do you guys have any kind of like push or drive to kind of increase the young professional signups, right? I mean, there's been some publications recently around there's a bit of a dip between the students. You even commented like your path within SPE is similar, right? You kind of step away for some time and then come back. And so do you have any initiatives to kind of increase YP engagement in membership growth?
It's a great question, and I appreciate Carter's perspective on it. So there's a couple things. The board's recognizing, and SP in general, there is a downward trend. We just did our monthly update yesterday, and they're saying that we're down 37% in YP membership, albeit only 500 people, so it's not a big number, but we need to try to increase that from where it was, you know, probably pre-COVID, but even after COVID, you know, there's a lot of YP membership from university and into the industry, you know, then versus now. You know, something to highlight there is that it's a bucket of 35 and under, right? And so as you transition from university to that, you are automatically a YP until your early career. And so what does that mean? I think we're still trying to put together what is happening with that membership. And so that's where a lot of the engagement is like kind of we're trialing a lot of new things here. And I'll give an example. So I know the main, SPE as a whole has granted that basically whenever you graduate from university, you get 1 year free of SPE membership paid for. That's a huge drive for our college students coming out into the industry moving forward. But a lot of those college students are going into entry level field positions or different things where they might not have that engagement. So keep an engagement with those people. One of the things that we've been driving in one of my initiatives this year was consistency. So, hey, we're going to have events regardless of date, you know, in a period of time frame every 2 weeks. And one of those things that we did was like, hey, we're going to have consistent meetings at the same place. We're going to have run club every other Wednesday at a location. It's free to come. Just come by. Maybe we'll get a drink after. We'll network after, whatever. But let's go. And I don't recommend this for anybody new in Houston. Don't come in June. It's wicked hot. But we keep it. We've had it for a year running, and we actually just transitioned it into pickleball. So now we're doing pickleball every other Wednesday, and trying to do different locations around Houston. And that's kind of the other thing we're trying to push. Our team actually launched a relocation guide, and we're gonna have a happy hour on the 9th, I think, to kind of go over it and review it. But basically, it's like a 15-page document. We want to hand the new people that reach out and say, hey, if you're international, if you're early career, if you're late in your career, we don't care if you're transitioning, if you're college, here's this guide of all these things and all these different organizations you could join. SB's in there. Remember us whenever, you get this. Here's the different places you can go in Houston. Here's the different places that you can do, like different things you can do on the weekends. And then also we have a networking group chat. We have probably about 100 people in there. Just, hey, UFC fight is tonight. We're going to go downtown. We're going to go watch it somewhere. Like, just come by, hang out, do some stuff with us. So it's trying to be more consistent as a community. It's also just making sure that we're consistent because over the last 5 years or so, whenever COVID hit and everything kind of dipped, we saw that drop off and we saw that people were less engaged. We saw people were moving out of Houston into like the suburbs and different things like that. And so trying to be a little bit more available for those people as a resource as well as just as an overall community. We do partner with, Rice University for their RSL program. They have an engineering leadership program there in the master's program. We do things with U of H. We're planning on doing tailgates and different things with them this year. And then A&M is pretty far, but we do engage with A&M as well as much as we can. So those are all kind of wrapped up in a bow. Those are some of the initiatives that we're trying to push. It requires a lot of effort from the team, and I really appreciate all of them for trying this year to move that needle.
And no, I appreciate the honesty and transparency around YP numbers. I think that acknowledging that is obviously what these town halls are trying to do, but also at least gets everybody on the same page. And so Amanda, kind of maybe a more tight knit type of section. What type of things have you seen, or what types of things have you all done to really try to improve young professional membership growth, but also engagement, right? I mean, everybody on this call are the volunteers within SPE YP. And so when you volunteer, you tend to keep volunteering. And so not only what types of things are you using to drive that membership growth, but turn that into really a participating member.
Absolutely. And you're definitely right. We do seek our volunteers from our active members. So, you have to start as a member before you can join as a volunteer. Otherwise, we won't accept your application if you've never attended an SP event in your life. But I would say that we do target students because they eventually do become young professionals. And, right now it's great that SP is offering free student memberships. I believe that will be changing, but we have gone to universities and presented at their career fairs and even doing simple contests like oh, if you sign up for SP membership right now, do it on your phone. And when you show us that you've signed up, we'll enter you into a draw for SPE hoodie, or just little things like that. Do get a lot of students signing up when you actually talk to them face to face and say, well, it's free, it takes 2 minutes, I'll show you how to do it on your phone. And then you'll get, by signing up as a member, you will automatically get our newsletter every Monday telling you what events we're doing. So that kind of pitch to students has been pretty successful. As well, in Canada, we have the SPE, Canadian Educational Foundation, which has a very successful scholarship program. So they have corporate donors that will donate to the scholarship program, and the scholarship recipients are guaranteed an interview at the sponsoring company. So students love that. The scholarship recipients do often end up being the person that gets hired as a summer student at these companies. But in order to apply, you must be an SPE member. So we always see a giant uptick in student memberships during the application period for those scholarships. We do notice that, however, once the students enter the industry, they'll get their free year of SP membership, and then several of them will not renew their SP membership. And I think there is a big lack of awareness of all the benefits of the SP membership, because our events are still drawing lots of attendees, but people will just pay the non-member price instead of buying a membership. And often, if someone is only attending a few networking events every year or a few lunch and learns every year, and they have no desire to engage with other aspects of SPE, then it doesn't make sense for them to purchase an SP membership, because they're better off just paying the higher price for the few events that they attend. So what we've been trying to do is, at every event, when we do our introduction slides before the speaker, for example, we'll make sure that we very quickly share some of the benefits of SP membership with the attendees, because many of them don't know all of the great sort of online benefits of the SPE memberships. So that's something that we've been really trying to promote, because oftentimes I'll be at a university and students will come by, and the first thing I ask them is, hi, have you ever heard of SPE? And I just get a blank stare and nobody's heard of SPE, which is pretty surprising to me. But I guess if you're a student, you might not know. So even in the general industry, a lot of early career people have never heard of SPE. Even at my workplace, when I talk to my coworkers, I'll say, oh, would you want to come to an SPE event? And if they ask me, well, what's SPE? So I am shocked at how many people don't seem to know about SPE. So I think we do need to really use word of mouth to share it, and making sure that at every event we do explain to people about SPE. We did have little brochures made as well, just to tell people the basics of SPE, what kind of things we do, our website. So that's been really helpful to have to give out to people. So if anyone wants the template for that, I can share it, and then you can get them printed. So yeah, there's a lot of things that we try to do, but the reality is that a lot of people just they don't feel like they need to have a membership if they can still attend all the events without a membership. So it's trying to convince them of the benefits of membership. And I've found the best way to do that is via word of mouth.
No, and that makes sense, and interesting perspective. Definitely surprised as well to hear folks are unaware of SPE, especially if you're working within the industry. But I think that kind of goes to show, when you're involved in it, you're involved. If you're not, then it's maybe just something completely out of mind. And so, Patrick, kind of wanted to get your perspective on similar types of things. You know, what are the biggest drivers to trying to get young professionals? Denver is definitely a place where folks are coming from different places, right? A lot of people live in Denver that are not from Denver. And I know that Denver is a hub regionally, being from Wyoming. A lot of folks from Wyoming go to Denver for work. And so what types of things has your section been doing to try to increase young professional engagement and growth?
I think for Denver, it's a very unique situation right now, just with the oil and gas market in general, just with the amount of M&A, acquisitions going on. We've seen just overall in our SPE chapter, some shrinkage over year to year just due to consolidation, and it's really sad to see. But it's just, a challenge that we got to face, and I think it's a very important challenge, that a hurdle that we need to get over, because same with our young professional chapter, it's just kind of been dwindling down as well, from people moving back to Houston. As you mentioned, it's kind of a hub and more of like a transplant city for us. So for us, it's really just networking events, doing happy hours, and just driving engagement through lunch and learns, and just trying to really drive that core engagement within people's busy schedules, because a lot of times I think Amanda put it pretty well about timing it out with hybrid schedules. VP's headquarters in Denver, and they work, I believe, 1 week in their office and 1 week remote. So just kind of scheduling your events around, who's going to be around downtown, just different venues as well, kind of drives a higher engagement in the young professional world in Denver, as well as, I think it's just super important. Kind of as Amanda said, you don't know what you don't know, and it's a big task for us, and kind of part of that hurdle of just putting out there, showing what SPE has to offer. I think that fee for for a 22-year-old, 23-year-old, just out of school, paying for that membership can look like, a big bill at the time for the year, to kind of just for a professional organization, but then showing them the value, just kind of cross knowledge sharing of their technical sessions, as well as just networking in general, just showing that value, what SPE has to offer, just really goes a long way. And not to go full circle here, but helping out Carter and the School of Mines chapter, kind of get ready for those career fairs, kind of doing mock interviews, resume cleanups, and just driving engagement within universities and kind of student chapters, I think really goes a long way, because then you get to see familiar faces that will, one day be in a professional industry, and just starting that kind of early development, and that kind of bridging that gap early on kind of goes a long way.
Well, thank you for that perspective, and I'll keep it on you to kind of go one step further, right? And so a challenge we face is bringing in YPs, but I kind of touched on it with Amanda. How do we turn a YP member into a YP volunteer? Because as SPE's size gets smaller, people wise, we're not wanting to shrink the things that we do, but all that takes volunteers. And so I guess kind of what opportunities does Denver section have around the entry level, if you will, volunteer type of opportunities, and what kind of efforts do you see there?
Definitely. I'll just start off with, we're always looking for volunteers, right? Compared to, I'm a little jealous of Amanda's section of a group of 30 volunteers, and having this whole committee. It looks a lot different in Denver, and that, I think that is something that we can do better of, just kind of putting a notice out there, whether it's our monthly newsletter, maybe just a QR code about, hey, this is what we're about, we need help volunteering. I think just giving that outlet to them to put their name in the hat and step up is step one, but also the most important step, because if they don't have a way of putting their name in the hat or signing up, then they really won't get that good opportunity. Across the board, our membership team's always looking for volunteers. We do a very some really good work in Denver as far as just helping out the community, doing local high school, middle school science fairs, being judges for them, and just kind of having a booth at those career fairs, just to teach them what oil and gas is about. And, it's not this boring old school industry, as, the oil field has shifted and changed year to year, and just kind of getting that, just giving those opportunities back to the community and just getting that outlet to put their name in the hat to volunteer. I feel like it's very important and just something that I think this our Denver section has just been doing a better job of over year to year.
Sure, and I know, at least kind of following you all on LinkedIn, I would agree. You guys do a great job with especially community outreach and those kinds of things. So great to see. I think you hit the nail on the head that we're always looking for volunteers. But, the caveat within that and something I've seen is a lot of times folks want to volunteer, but they want to be on the frat conference committee. And that's what they want their first volunteer experience to be. And that's not always so much the case, right? And so, Keith, you guys have a pretty large pool of folks. And so do you all have kind of some entry level volunteer things that you can kind of help promote those stepping stones to get to maybe some of the more high profile type of volunteer opportunities?
Yeah, right. So we have a pretty large board. It kind of mimics the GCS board. There's also the volunteers that help with the different study groups of the GCS board. So you kind of see some familiar faces cross. If they're at a Northside event, then you'll see them at the next event. For YP, if we run into each other or different things. But like what we do strongly try to consider and try to push is when the volunteers sign up, or we try to gauge for volunteers. I use Roughneck Camp as an example. We have our core coordination team, and they may reach out to their like organizations, like SLB, kind of strong armed a bunch of kids from early career that she had there, and she said, "Hey, come help me cut all these name tags up. I'll make you cookies." And that was kind of really good. It was really ingenious because we need the work done. And then actually, we're going through the phase now with Roughneck Camp wrapping up, and I'm trying to acknowledge those individuals in our newsletters and different things like that. So we had a lot of standouts. We had a lot of help. Roughneck Camp's a huge all-day event. But in order to keep that flow going, it's really the volunteers that help that going, like navigation or, parking help or carrying things for different people throughout the event, through the day. And then whenever you get to talk with those individuals, it's a networking opportunity with them as well. And then they come out of it and they go, "Hey, what is SPE YP? Like, where do you guys meet? What do you guys do?" And it's like, "Okay, well, come by our meeting. Come by our general meeting. It's open to anybody. Come by this networking event we have coming up." And when you start seeing those familiar faces, it's like, okay, this person's really involved, really, hey, apply. We'll see about where you want to, kind of make your mark with YP going forward. And so we do kind of follow the same process of like, hey, if we see you coming by, if we see that you're engaged, come join our board, come join our, these opportunities with these things. But in general, we just need volunteers all the time, for all these different events. We do, community service events and different things, and we see those guys pop through. We have the Chevron Marathon. They do a food drive at the same time. That's a big one. If somebody's willing to come on a Saturday all day, and kind of help out, then there's really a lot of drive there from those individuals. And so it's always good to give back to them. Patrick kind of hit on something about, I think Amanda as well, about bringing individuals from your organizations if you have the opportunity. And so that's something that a call to action to all these, I guess, organizations that we're trying to support, the Chevrons, the Exxons, Ovintiv, whoever, right? If there's an event, bring somebody with, and maybe they would like the engaged, maybe they like the event, they want to help out with it. But I'd say we're not too picky on our volunteers. And I'm not saying that as in, we'll take anybody, but my point there is that we always need more help. So if somebody's showing engagement, we really appreciate that, and we really like to give back to them and allow them opportunities to support SPE.
Yeah, I think that's very well put. Because this is all, even this meeting, right? I mean, this is above and beyond our day job. Like, this isn't the main focus of what we do for a living, but it's something that we care about. And so their help is always welcome. I'll kind of take that lead in with you, Amanda, and really specifically around volunteering and trying to increase those things, of course. But how have you seen, and maybe I'm picking on you unfairly, but how have you seen like companies' willingness to have their employees volunteer, and how does SPE maybe get rewarded within some companies and others, and what as an industry could we maybe improve to help with SPE engagement?
Yeah, I think some companies, I don't think it's company specific necessarily. I think it's more manager specific. So I'm very lucky that my manager is an engineer and he's very supportive of me attending SPE events and going out and meeting people. And that might come with, my job being in commercial development. Part of that is, networking and going out and meeting people. So I've been able to actually set up meetings that are business related through my SPE contacts. And so the value has been easy for me to demonstrate to my employer that when I am going to an SPE event, that it is, still me working. And I do put in my goals as well every year that, to have industry involvement, attending industry events, being an active member of professional societies. So when I go and do those events, if anyone complains, I would say, well, this is my goal for one of my goals for the year. So don't interfere with me meeting my goals, kind of thing. So I would suggest to everybody to put that in your goals at work, especially if you can have a professional development related goal, make it be an active a member of SPE or be a volunteer with industry associations, and then you can justify spending time doing this type of stuff. Obviously, your work can get busy at times, and then you have to prioritize that, of course. But if you plan ahead, I don't see why anyone couldn't find the time to be involved in SPE. Also, I find with companies, I had a very interesting conversation with our engineering manager last year where he said, oh, I only have $1,000 per person training budget on my team. That's not enough. And I told him, well, do you realize that if you were to buy everybody on your team an SPE membership, that they would have basically unlimited access to webinars and lots of different things that could count as training? And he had no idea. And when I told him the price of SPE membership, he was very surprised that he hadn't considered doing that sooner. So I think making sure that you're telling people that have authority over training budgets about the value of an SPE membership, especially in terms of the webinars with all the technical sections that are free for members, especially because in Canada, the engineering profession is regulated. So you do have to submit annual professional development to the regulatory bodies, and that can cause stress to some people because their employers don't always pay for them to go to conferences, etc. So if they can attend free SPE webinars as an SPE member, that can relieve a lot of financial stress of someone who is trying to maintain their professional engineer designation in Canada. So there's various ways that you can go about presenting the value proposition. But anytime I meet an executive, I always try to find the opportunity to tell them, oh, are you sending your employees to SPE lunch and learns, etc.? Did you know that they can use that for their professional designation? And it's a lot cheaper than, sending them to a $2,000 training course in London. And that tends to actually give people a light bulb moment, and they're like, oh yeah, SPE is actually a very affordable way to get training because we're a nonprofit. There's many for-profit companies that do training and they pay all their speakers, but SPE, we do not pay any of our lunch and learn speakers. The SPE Canada used to do training courses where they did pay the speaker, but the fee was still low enough that it just covered the cost of the events. So SPE is a really great way to get affordable training, and that's required for all professional engineers in Canada to maintain their designation. So I really do try to tell people, well, it's not just for fun and having beers, it's actually for maintaining your professional designation and allowing you to legally practice engineering. So that is one way I try to pitch it to people.
Sure. No, and that's That's a great kind of lead into the final question. Then we can open it up briefly to some audience questions. But Carter, it'd be interesting to hear your side on really maybe the value that you've seen within volunteering. I know your stage and the folks you interact with, jobs are a big central focus. Of course, they are for everybody all the time. But what kind of value have you seen from volunteering versus maybe some folks that that don't volunteer, right? And kind of what does that split look like?
Absolutely. I personally, I love to be a volunteer. I think one of the best parts of it for me is to be able to come up with new ideas and different ways to do things to help create and drive value back to our members. I think that that's by far and away the best one-liner that I could give you about volunteering and giving back from SPE. I think that when you are a member, being able to go to the planned activities and that world is wonderful. I think that there's a lot of value within it. But I think once you become a volunteer, similar to what Amanda said earlier, you get chances to develop leadership skills and showcase your leadership skills on a level that you might not be able to in your day jobs yet. And I think that at least on a student level, I know a lot of different SPE people across different schools, and those who do volunteer have seen tangible results from that still as a student. And I can imagine, especially for the other members on the panel today, that professionally speaking, with them being as volunteers, I'm sure all of them can have an example of that paying itself forward in their professional careers. So I think there's the tangible side of things of being able to give back to your members and to help create opportunities and help contribute to their growth. But I think there's also the very intangible side of personal development and being able to learn, lead, and grow.
No, and I think that's a great place to end. I know I did a relatively poor job at time management since we're supposed to wrap up in 2 minutes. But Mohammed, I hope you're on the call now, so I can kind of kick it over to you if you want to facilitate a Q&A and maybe get a couple questions in from the audience. But the last thing I want to say is just thank you to the panel. As I commented, this is above and beyond day jobs, and so thank you all very, very much for representing your chapters and your sections, and definitely I very much appreciate it.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Excellent. Thank you, Brent. So now we can actually move on to the Q&A. For anyone who has a question, just please feel free to maybe type in the chat, raise your hand, or maybe unmute yourself. Direct the questions to the right speaker and manage the discussion from here. But if you need any assistance, I'd be more than happy to assist.
Thanks, Brent, and thanks to all the people who are just telling more about SP sections and how they went on to their journey. My specific question was to Amanda. I kind of relate, when you were telling about the budgeting support, or letting your manager know on how impact it would make to attend any kind of SP events and stuff. But especially sometimes, that is a very big constraint when it comes to budget. They kind of give the reason that we may have to support everyone, or we don't have the budget this year and stuff. So what are the other different ways, that one can follow in order to attend certain events where we have this kind of budget constraint? So how do you reach out to, other organizations or any other parties in that case? So that would be really helpful to know, because in my region, we do have that, constraint as a big stone. So your recommendations or, your points would definitely help us to implement maybe. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. I would say if you're finding that the events are not affordable, contacting your section and providing them that feedback is important. Us in Calgary, we charge $10 for a young professional lunch and learn, and that includes your meal. And we found that we do need to make sure we are charging something for attendees, because if we make events free, we do get 200 people sign up and maybe only 40 of them will actually show up, which makes it really hard to plan for food, etc. So we have a policy where we do charge for every event, just to have some commitment from the people that sign up. But we've kept the price very low, and because we know that young professionals their companies aren't always going to pay for their tickets to these types of events. So we need to keep it below a certain threshold where people feel like if they want to come, that they can personally pay if they have to. So, that means we don't get a fancy 3-course meal, right? We order pizza or sandwiches, but most people are happy with that because it keeps the prices down. And we do have our venue also sponsored, so we don't have any costs in terms of venues. So that helps us keep our events very affordable. And I would say also, if your company tells you that they don't have budget to buy your SPE membership, then my question to your company is, well, what is their training budget? Because if they can't even buy an SPE membership, do they have a single dollar in their training budget? Because SPE memberships are pretty cheap in the grand scheme of training opportunities. So if your company doesn't have any training budget, that would be quite concerning. And I might escalate that to upper management at your company if that's the case, or try to find another company that does support your training, because an SPE membership is not very expensive for a company. I know some companies do have policies where they might pay for one engineering membership. So in Canada, people are the first membership that they buy is their Professional Engineering Association membership, because that's mandatory to practice engineering in Canada. And so companies that have the one membership policy, they usually will not pay for the SPE membership. And in that situation, then it's up to the employee to promote a convincing argument to whoever has authority over the budget to make an exception and buy their membership. And what SPE has had to do for some of their conferences is, because some people would rather pay a higher conference fee and not have to go through the conversation of asking for a membership than getting an SPE membership and getting a discounted conference fee that more than compensates for the price of the membership. So it's very interesting that some people will actually pay more when they could pay less and get an SP membership in the process. So it is, I find, up to the individual employee to make that case. And, if you can say it in black and white, well, if you're sending me to this SP conference, it's actually cheaper if I get the SP membership and pay the member rate. It's 2 transactions, but it's actually cheaper. So I think sometimes it's just really trying to push it and be convincing. So hopefully that answers your question. But if it doesn't, you can definitely reach out to me on LinkedIn.
Sure, Amanda. Thanks for that response. Definitely, the company is very much supportive in terms of sponsorship. The membership. But yeah, when it comes to event, there is a hard stone that we have to unturn every time. So yeah, thanks for your suggestions. Yeah.
If you don't mind, I would love to piggyback off that, Amanda. So there's also a few other ways, and I don't advocate this without manager approval, as you mentioned, but like everyone has expenses, right? Usually there's a roll up at the end of the month for expenses. $10 to go to a professional event usually isn't going to be something that is a problem, and that's something too. You can expense your membership for the year to get that rate. But other things too, like you could advocate for sponsorship. So something we do in Houston here is most of the time, like we have a corporate sponsorship for the year, but we might have, like Amanda mentioned, like a venue sponsor. And so if we have that venue sponsor, they'll get complimentary seats. And so we'll give them maybe 2 or 3 if it's a small event, or like Roughneck Camp, depending on the amount of money that's sponsored, it's like 20 to 30 seats. And so that's something to advocate too. Comes from the lower level, right? Or the management level. But it's something to say, hey, like not only would an SPE membership or a professional membership, organization membership, help, but have you thought about sponsoring multiple people throughout the year? And then we'll try to make sure that we're not losing those seats or losing those spots. And so like as an example, let's say we do a lunch and learn. I'll throw out there next year sponsors the venue. We try to give 5 seats and we usually fill them, and it's people that are maybe not even members in SPE, right? And so that's something that you could, from a lower level advocate up to, like, hey, this is an opportunity, bring in Amanda, bring in myself, Patrick, even Brent, say, hey, sit down, let's talk about how the organization can help with it in other ways other than, just paying for this outright? What do they get back in return?
Yeah, no, thank you, Amanda and Keith for piggybacking off of that. And then I know we are pretty well past time, so I do apologize for my time management, but maybe close Q&A for now. And if you have specific questions for our four speakers, I'm sure they'll be receptive to reaching out on LinkedIn. Everybody's as networking was a big theme. Everyone's very willing to network and meet new folks. So,
Brent,
yeah, Mohammed, I can pass it off to you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I actually should be the one apologizing because we're 10 minutes past the time. So this is really from my end. So I should be the one apologizing, but thanks to you. Please, if you have any other commitments and you'd like to leave, please feel free to do so. But if you have any questions, and maybe you can either connect with the speakers afterwards, or maybe you can direct them to us because I'll be staying. But before we continue with the Q&A, maybe I just wanted to pause for a moment to acknowledge that we actually have Susan, who's our 2027 SPE president. And I'd like to thank her for joining us today. And maybe would like to see if Susan, you want to share any quick thoughts or comments with the group, maybe before we proceed with the Q&A or conclude the session. So if you have anything to add, please feel free to kind of unmute yourself and just please.
Thank you for the opportunity. I've really enjoyed listening to this session. You all have great ideas and obviously a lot of passion for SPE. And I look forward to participating in your events in the years to come. So I don't have anything more to add, but keep up the good work. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Susan, for joining us today, and we really appreciate your presence, and we hope that you enjoyed the discussion for today. With this, we will probably conclude the session now. Thank you, everybody, for attending today. Thank you, Brent. Thanks to our speakers as well for doing really a wonderful job in sharing their experiences. We appreciate your time and insights, and we hope to see you in future events. So thank you, everybody, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Appreciate it.
guys.